You went all Big Ten talk, all Caps and Wizards and baseball talk. We're getting into football right now with one of my favorite human beings that walks the planet. He walks the planet these days down in Mobile, Alabama, as the former Ravens college scouting director. He's got Super Bowl rings, Alabama rings, and the pains of once running the Cleveland Browns for a very short period of time. He is Senior Bowl Phil. He's my lifer pal, Phil Savage, on the backside of combines and Senior Bowls, and now the real work begins, right, Phil? Now you got to assemble a team. That's what this is the most important week of the year, right?
Yeah, Nestor, you covered the gamut there, brother. You brought the highs and the lows with you on that intro. But this is where your plans, the work that you've done in January after the season ended, those most important organizational meetings when you've really assessed each individual player on your team and where they are and where you think they're going in the future with their career. And now that all the All-Star games have been played, the combine, all the numbers and measurables are in for the most part, you really can assess where you can help your team the most, either in free agency or the draft or some combination thereof. So this is when you begin to enact that plan that was really put together in early to mid-February.
Listen, next year I'm going to try to get down to your game because I haven't been there in a couple of years, and obviously we've had some off-the-field issues here in Baltimore. And to see a Dak Prescott and a Carson Wentz go down to your place, go out onto that riverboat there and eat some ribs and some beans and, pretty Southern co-eds and lots of scouts and media and growing the game and coaches from, every general manager, every famous coach is down there for a couple of days. And then to see what Dak Prescott does and Carson Wentz immediately in this league. And you know about immediate impact from the days when you drafted John Ogden and Ray Lewis and Peter Boulware and how that affects your program. The Cowboys really won last year, right? And that's sort of where the standard is here over the next 6 weeks is the Ravens and other teams need to have the kind of draft the Cowboys had where you look up and you say, we got 3 or 4 starters and it's week 10 and we're 7-3 or 8-2 or 6-4 or somewhere on the good side of having a chance getting into the holidays. And the Senior Bowl really is a big part of that journey. And I know you've really opened it up to make it perfect for guys who do the job that you did for most of your life.
Yeah, Nestor, we're proud of what we've been able to put together down here in terms of the Reese's Senior Bowl. Our sponsorships are solid. Our coverage is incredible from NFL Network and live programming now on ESPN as an additional platform.
Everyone knows what it is, Phil. If you know anything about the NFL, you've heard of the Senior Bowl, right? I mean, literally, that's you've gotten this thing. It's on the map, so to speak.
Well, there's 2 things I tell people. First of all, when you speak of the NFL, really you're talking about 32 NFL cities, Canton, Ohio, and Mobile, Alabama. Now, Orlando is going to try to jump into the fray with the Pro Bowl. We'll see, what direction that goes. But, I mean, you think about that, and that really makes it special for our city down here and the tradition that's in place. But then the other thing I would point out is that when you look at the All-Star games in other sports, the other college All-Star football games that are played before ours, I think it's clear that it is the number one best All-Star game because the guys are really competing for something. And we saw that happen again this year. We had a player named Hassan Reddick. He was a defensive end at Temple. And I invited him as an inside linebacker or a linebacker that would play off the ball because he's 6'1", about 230 pounds. He was very reluctant about playing off the ball and doing something that he had really never done before. I talked him off the ledge on Sunday night and Monday. I promise you, Nestor, he's the one player of the 110 that's gained more from the experience of the Senior Bowl this year. And then he followed up with a tremendous combine. I think he's solidly in the first round now. When he arrived in Mobile, he's probably about a third rounder.
Well, time will tell, and I watched him run his 40, and, we're learning more at the Combine, and look, Phil, it's not like there wasn't a bright light back in 1996. I mean, you and I have been talking this Lawrence Phillips, the late Lawrence Phillips story, and you'll tell that story to your grandchildren. I'll tell that story of caution for everyone, and you think about where the lights were in 1996 and where they are in 2017 for all of these kids, and I know you've been down there, and a lot of folks don't know that you're one of the voices, along with Eli Gold at Alabama, and you got a pocket full of rings. Every time Nick Saban wins, Phil Savage wins, not just Ozzie Newsome. And you're down there when a kid gets sent home from the Combine. I mean, that's not a red flag, that's a crimson flag, right?
Yeah, it really is. And of course, Bama's having their pro day this week, and it's the first time I can recall that it's occurring, within just a couple of days of the Combine. But Nick Saban, think of this, Nestor. In 2007, Alabama did not have a single player selected in the NFL draft that particular year. That was his first spring on the scene before his first season as the head coach down here. And now 10 years later, they're going to have anywhere from 2 to 5 first-rounders this year. They've produced more NFL talent in the last 6-7 years than any team in the country. So, he trains them the right way. You have to decide how much upside is available to a player because the coaching is so exceptional, and they do maximize a lot of the guys' abilities here, especially the guys that stay 4 or 5 seasons. But then the other thing that you have to be cognizant of is because things are so buttoned up in Tuscaloosa, you have to make sure that the individual player is accountable and enough to handle his life outside of what they call the process down here. And Terrence Cody was a perfect example. Here in Tuscaloosa, he had 2 really solid seasons, was a driving force behind Alabama's first national title in 2009. He ended up at the Ravens and obviously ran into some problems off the field where he just could not manage his affairs outside of the white lines, and ultimately it cost him his career. So, that's the tricky part for the scouts, and that goes on at all the schools. But I do think that Alabama gets a ton of attention because of the volume of players that they're putting into the league each and every year now.
Phil, how do they get it wrong on Johnny Manziel? I mean, you drafted a lot of guys. You made some mistakes. More than anyone, and my friendship with you, I can honestly admit, no one took it any harder when Ryan Sutter couldn't get on the field than you. You put your name on the line, and where the Ravens are right now when Matt Elam is, dealing drugs down in South Florida 2 weeks ago. Eric has his name on that. Ozzie has, Steve Bisciotti, John, they all have their name on it. And the drafts here have been choppy at best the last 5 years. But then there's something like Johnny Manziel where all of this recon, all of these bright lights, all of the Senior Bowls and the Combines and the interview process, and the janitors know about these kids and the teammates and the girlfriends and the families. All that work is getting done, not just on did he ever get arrested? I can find that on a state search right now from where I'm sitting, but more about the person themselves. And yet there's still these horrific swings and misses, even in the modern era.
I think in that particular situation, it was probably a desperate teams do desperate things. And, with Johnny Manziel, he was a very much hyped college player, a sensation at Texas A&M. His 2 games against Alabama back-to-back years, 2012 and 2013, are as good a 2 games as anyone's ever really played against Nick Saban, going back to Drew Brees when Nick was at Michigan State.
Right, and you're up in the press box calling that game, and you're mesmerized, and you know what you're doing, right?
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you had to go back and look at the reality. This is a very small player, and there were a lot of red flags off the field, and I think that emotion played a part into it. I think, again, the Browns have been so desperate to find a quarterback that, I'm not going to call it a marketing ploy, but obviously it was going to energize the city and the fan base if he could have become a player. The bottom line reality is that, like a lot of these college spread quarterbacks, the transition from the collegiate game to the NFL level, especially if you're going to try to run a conventional NFL offense, it's a quantum leap. I mean, you may as well have somebody try to jump across the Grand Canyon on a bicycle. It's just simply not going to happen, or it's going to take a lot of time. And not only was that a struggle for Manziel on the field, but obviously some of his demons off the field really came to light once he was outside of a program and living life on his own. And to me, that's what the challenge of the NFL scout is now. It's not so much even determine, okay, does this guy have the goods to at least compete in the league on the field? It's how will they be able to handle themselves in the meetings, in the classroom, on the field. Can they get along with their teammates? Are they coachable? What kind of maturity and baggage do they bring off the field? Could be family, could be substance abuse, could be alcohol, and that's really where the homework's got to be done. And the colleges are very sensitive to that, and oftentimes, Nestor, they don't reveal all the dark secrets on these players, and that's where the scout is really challenged to go beyond the first or second layer to really try to find out what his organization is going to get in a player.
And then there's a guy like you that traveled to every side of North Dakota and South Dakota, looking for the next Jim Klein saucer. And, you're down there in Mobile, and Dak Prescott rolls in there. And, do you know? Obviously, if everybody knew, they would have taken him in the third round or the second round or the first round. Everybody's looking for their Tom Brady. I mean, you went through this with Chris Redman, and, everybody's looking for that third, fourth, fifth round quarterback that can come in and play like Tom Brady for 10 years, and somehow the Cowboys found that last year, and that kid was under your nose, as I said, for a week last year, and, maybe you have some sense about it, but clearly 31 other teams didn't have that sense earlier in the draft, or they would have gone in that direction.
Yeah, a couple things I would point out, with Dak Prescott. I mean, he was the face of the franchise at Mississippi State for really a solid 3 years. Against Alabama a year ago, he got sacked 9 times, Nestor. I mean, when you left Stark Vegas that particular Saturday afternoon, you would not have said, hey, we just saw the next year's NFL Rookie of the Year. He just got blasted in a 31-0 or 38-3 loss.
Did you ask for more cowbell, by the way, down there, or no?
Well, they didn't have much that particular day, but the reality is this. He is a very sturdy build. He's got a magnetic personality. And Nestor, it's funny you bring him up because Shaq Harris and I had a conversation at the Combine. He's since retired now, lives in Orlando, but he comes to the Combine every year. And we talked about that when you watch Dak Prescott in college, the biggest concern I had about Dak was his pinpoint accuracy beyond 20 yards. And the fact that his football had a little bit of a flutter, it had a little bit of a tail on it, sometimes beyond that 15, 20-yard threshold. And Shaq and I both had the same comment, that his pinpoint accuracy and his ability to spin the ball in almost a perfect spiral really jumped out last year as a rookie. So I don't know if Scott Linehan and the coaches at the Cowboys changed maybe his grip, made an adjustment. Maybe it's the shape of the NFL football compared to the one he was using at State. But when guys were open, he put it on them. And that was the thing that really jumped out to both Shaq and I as we talked about Dak. But, we do a team swap on Friday, the day before the Reese's Senior Bowl. We take the coaching staff, flip them, and give them a chance to meet with the other 50 or so players on the opposite side. And it was in that meeting with Dak Prescott that Scott Linehan and the Cowboys, as they got up and left that particular interview, they said, there's something special about that kid. We really need to continue to follow up and do our homework on him. And, another thing to keep in mind as well, Nestor, is remember, after his pro day last year, Dak had a DUI in Starkville. And I think that maybe, caused people to have some hesitation, pause, particularly in the first or second round. and ultimately the Cowboys take him in the 4th round. It works out. They have some injuries with Tony Romo, and Kellen Moore. He goes in, and it's a perfect scenario. They have a well-oiled machine in the run game with their line, and then they drafted Ezekiel Elliott, established tight end, and Jason Witten, Des Bryant on the outside. I mean, they have some equipment for a quarterback to and a cockpit for a quarterback to sit in, and he did that extremely well. He flew the plane better than people could have ever expected.
He is my longtime friend and Senior Bowl. Phil out on Twitter, the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl. He's down in Mobile. He's on Sirius XM. He's on ESPN. But he wouldn't be anywhere if I didn't interview him first. Right, Phil? I gave you all the tough questions. I got you ready for all the hardness of this media spotlight, right?
It all started at the Hilton in Pikesville. That's where it all began.
It all started when you drafted John Ogden, and here we are 21 years later. Phil, it's unbelievable, right? Ozzie is the only person who's ever picked a football player in this franchise, and he's still here, still doing it with John Harbaugh. And, I don't need to tell you times are tough here. You've sat through those Steve Bisciotti press conferences. You know what they're about. And he said the pitchforks are out from the fans and the media and the national media because the Ravens haven't made the playoffs 3 out of 4 years. I don't need to tell you about Matt Elam and Terrence Brooks and where Brashad Perryman is and all that. This is an incredibly crucial 6 to 8 weeks of period of time, I think, for the whole organization, for the coaches, for the general manager, for the owner, and for what direction the team's going to go in, because I don't think they can afford a 6-10 this year, Phil.
Yeah, it's going to be all about the execution in free agency, those that they let walk, those that they want to try to bring in, and then working that in conjunction with the draft. And Nestor, I can tell you this, that based upon my exposures this fall, trying to put the Senior Bowl together, obviously sponsored by Reese's, and then, of course, at the Combine, and just seeing all the position groups. If you need a running back, if you need a tight end, there's tremendous depth at those positions. There's depth on the D-line with the edge rushers, outside backer types, and then there's depth in the secondary. But quarterback-wise, offensive line-wise, I really look for there to be a lot of activity in pro free agency. Could even be some trades involving quarterbacks and offensive linemen. I don't think there'll be much of a market for tight ends or running backs because those guys really put on a clinic out in Indianapolis.
Last thing for you, down in Alabama, they're used to winning championships down there, and as Bear said, he ain't never been nothing but a winner. And to lose, look what happened to the Falcons, right? What happened to the Indians and and the Golden State Warriors? Blowing massive leads, big advantages. It's been a crazy year in sports all the way around, but people expect Alabama to win when they get into that position. Very, very weird end of the evening there, and I'm sure it leads to much angst, at least in half the state. Over in Auburn, they're doing a hat dance over there. They're war eagling. But from the Bama side, this is tough sledding, much like it's going to be for the Falcons the next 6 months, right?
Yeah, I would say this, though, Nestor. Alabama, they had a heartbreaking loss. They were number one in the country for 14 games in 59 minutes and 59 seconds of the 15th game when Clemson got the job done with Deshaun Watson and Dabo Swinney hoisting that trophy. But by noon the next day, literally less than 12 hours, Alabama was already installed as the odds-on favorite for the 2017 National Championship. They were installed as a preseason number one by the end of the next day. And so, the relentless pressure, the relentless pursuit of perfection, it never goes away. And 15 of their 25 recruits are already on campus as mid-year enrollees. They'll start spring ball here in a couple weeks. And, they open with Florida State in the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. So there's not a break. It's just the way it is. That's the expectation. Nick Saban has established that, and the players that choose to come here are all in when it comes to the Crimson Tide. And, of course, the fan base is right there with them. Always when they're on the winning side of things.
I'll come down and see you for some barbecue, and we'll shuck some raw oysters and watch the sunset there with our toes in the sand at some point. Phil, relax. I'll see you in Philadelphia before it's all over with. Draft coming up. We got all sorts of stuff. There's no off season here in the NFL. We know that, right?
No, there's not. Nestor, listen, have a great off season. Good luck to the Ravens, and we definitely will catch up in Philadelphia. I'll be up there for the Friday and Saturdays of the 3-day event, and I'll look forward to catching up in person.
I'll come for the freedom. You come for the cheesesteaks. We'll get some pretzels. It'll be a nice time. Phil, I'll see you in a few weeks, pal.
All right, thanks, Nestor.
Senior Bowl Phil is the way to find him out on Twitter. He is the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl, ESPN Insiders, Sirius XM, Crimson Tide Radio. He's a busy beaver. He really is. Actually, he's a busy Crimson Tider. I don't know what his school, I don't know what the fighting nicknames of the Swannies were, but I'm going to find that out. I'm going to Google that. Senior Bowl Phil, our dear friend and long-time Ravens college scouting director, and just a good man all the way around. So go follow him out on Twitter at Senior Bowl Phil. You'll learn a lot about football, that's for sure. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear. Our morning newspaper ships at 7 a.m. every morning to your email inbox. That's brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in shape, and the weather is breaking. Never better time to go get in shape. They got the Lunk Alarm over there. They're judgment-free. It's planetfitness.com. Learn more out online. And just go down the street and walk in and say hi. Tell them we sent you. Last but never least, breaking news, and there's plenty of that going on with the Ravens with free agency. When it happens, you'll get it first on the WNST text service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis will be here on Thursday driving you home with the SSV on WNST. Our London trip is on sale. Over 100 folks already signed up. We're taking even more of you. Still have a little bit of space left. You can send me an email, or you can just go to the road trips tab at WNST.net, our London trip up. Green Bay, Nashville, Oakland, Minnesota, all coming up next month when the schedule comes out. Busy weeks around here. Gosh, we got the Caps and the Wizards out on the West Coast. We got the Big Ten thing happening. We got the Orioles in the afternoon. And moment by moment, this drips and drabs, the free agent news is going to come out. Nasty at WNST.net is the best way to find me. I am a very available individual. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. We stream live on Facebook Live as well as on our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.